You may be seated. Good morning, Cornerstone and visitors. As I mentioned earlier, my name is Kevin McGill. I'm the pastor here. Thank you guys for coming out this Easter morning. And we have been talking about resurrection. We've been talking about what it means to be people of the resurrection, what it means to have new life. And as I was preparing this message the last couple of days, I realized something, that this is actually my fourth Easter with Cornerstone. This is my fourth Easter with this church. And Jenny and I, we were in Dallas, Texas. We had spent over a decade there. We had done ministry there. We had gone to seminary, and we had experienced life. And at least for myself, I had gotten used to what Dallas was. I had gotten used to the culture. But to be honest, as we were packing up those boxes and we were getting the moving van and we were setting up our new place, our new location, I didn't know what to expect here. There were a few things I thought I could expect. A few things I was pretty sure I was going to experience, but at the end of the day, I wasn't sure where it was all going. So the first thing I would say is I expected it would be hard. I was surprised by joy when it comes to this church. I expected no one would get my Star Wars references, and then I met the Beckers. Because of the factories and lifestyles, I expected people would be overworked, tired, exhausted. I was surprised that they still gave to their community, family, and church. I expected corn. I got corn. I expected the snow would be hard. I didn't expect that it made spring even sweeter. I expected the traffic would be difficult, congested, accident after accident. I didn't expect the backcountry roads would be a little heaven on earth. I expected the Mexican food would be questionable. There's always room for improvement. I expected that I would learn to grow with the church. I didn't expect I would truly love it. We expect death. We don't expect life. Easter says it's time to raise your expectations. We expect for life to not go our way. We expect to not get out of it what we want. We expect death. We don't expect life. I often tell stories of me and Jenny, our romantic interludes. Let me tell another one. There I was in a parking lot. I think it was like 2003. And I was talking to this fine young lady, and we were having this conversation. She was talking about this elderly woman that she took care of and how much she loved to pour her time into this woman and to support her and to help her out, and just something about that giving spirit, it got my attention. I saw her a couple of more times, and I knew that there was going to be this big get-together at our school, at our seminary, and I wanted to spend a little more quality time with her. So I said, hey, you want to go with me and everyone else to this thing? And she said, no. I said, okay. So the next time I saw her, she was talking about this woman that she spent time with, and I was trying to figure out how I could, let's be honest, weasel my way in. So I said, you know that elderly lady that you have lunch with once a week on Tuesdays? She said, yeah. I said, I'd love to get to know her. Can I join you guys for lunch? She sounds so special. And Jenny said, of course, well, yeah, come on out. So I came on out for lunch, and we had a great time. And at the end, as she took the lady to the car, and I pulled Jenny aside, I said, that was a real special time. Could we debrief over coffee later on this evening, say 8 o'clock? And she said, sure. And then we did that. And then we went to a little store, and they were selling these trinkets, and they were selling these books. And there was a book of poems. And Jenny said, I really like that book. And I said, oh, you like that book? And she said, yeah, I like that book. I said, well, I'll just go and buy it for you. So I bought the book for her. I gave it to her. She called me the next day around 2, 3 o'clock. And she said, I don't usually get gifts from men. So I'm wondering, did you give me this gift as a romantic gesture? I said, no, I buy Dr. Zhivago poems for every girl I meet. Don't worry about it. She said, okay. So we hung up, and then I just realized I lied to my future wife. I need to call her back. So I called her back, and I said to Jenny, I'm sorry. I wasn't very honest with you. I have feelings for you. And she said, Kevin, that was so brave of you. And I'm like, okay, here it comes. She said, I don't have feelings for you. Oh my goodness. I cannot tell you over the next 6 months how many times I sat down and I said, I have feelings for you. And she said, I don't have feelings for you. Time after painful time. And then it was May, I forgot where it was, like Highland Park or something. We were there walking some grassy knoll. And we were just talking, and then Jenny just turned to me and said, well, are you going to? I said, what? She said, are you going to ask me out? Is this a trap? I feel like this is a trap. She said, well, you're always asking me out, so why don't you give it another shot? I'm like, I have feelings for you. Will you date me? And she said the unexpected. Yes. We all lived happily ever after. So many times when we're dealing with life situations, we expect for things to go wrong because of one big idea: death. Life is broken. It doesn't go our way. It doesn't line up with what we want. It doesn't support our desires. Life seems to have a way of just running in discord to the things that we want. We expect death. Easter says, change your expectations. In fact, that's exactly what we're going to see today in Luke chapter 24, verse 1. Luke chapter 24, verse 1. We're going to see that story that many of you guys are familiar with. It's the story of the women approaching the tomb, and what you're going to see with them is that they are living under a particular reality, and the particular reality is that death reigns, and if death reigns, it has rules, and if it has rules, you follow the rules. And see, they know that death reigned, and this is why they know that death reigned, was because a couple of days before there was this Messiah. Now this Messiah, he came to Israel. He said he was going to change everything for everybody, especially the Jewish people. They took this as we were under this political regime, we were oppressed, and that this Messiah, because he's talking about David, and he's the son of David, and that he's going to be king, so in their minds, he is going to change the political landscape, get rid of the Romans, get rid of the religious leaders, and bring in a whole new regime, and he's going to be on top. So their idea was that's how this was going to happen, and they followed him. They followed all the way to Jerusalem, and then they followed him to his death on the cross. And as they saw him put up, as they saw the nails being driven into his hands, and they saw the crown of thorn going over his head, their expectations kind of returned to what they thought. This was not going to work out. Death was going to reign, and in fact, around 3 o'clock on that Friday, they watched their Messiah, who they had put so much heart and life into, gasp for his breath, and finally say, into your hands I commit my spirit. And then he breathed his last. And that is death reigning. That's all they know. That's all they've ever known. Right? This is the rule. You're put up on a cross, and nails go through you, crown of thorns, your lash, asphyxiation, you're going to die. That's the rule of death. And so now here comes Joseph of Arimathea, takes him, puts him into his tomb. They lay him, but they don't have enough time because Sabbath is here, so they can't properly dress the body. So they just put the body in the tomb. They roll the stone in front of the tomb, and they leave, and they make a commitment. They're going to come back Sunday morning. So Sunday morning, what we see are these women. One of them is Mary Magdalene. Another one's Mary, the mother of James. These women are coming to the tomb, and they are following the rules of death. And these are the rules of death. In verse 1, it says, on the first day of the week, very early in the morning, the women took the spices they had prepared and went to the tomb. So what are these spices? Why are they taking the spices to the tomb? So the spices would have probably been like some type of a spice that helped with the smell of a body decomposing. What they would do, the Jewish people, is they would take this spice and they would rub it over the body, and then it helped with the smell, because there obviously is a smell when death has ruled. The body dies and begins to decompose, and so they put the spices over the body of Jesus. That was the expectation, and so in their hands they were playing by the rules of death. This is how death works. We know the rules. We know our part. We know what part we're supposed to play. Some of you, most of you, all of you know that there are certain rules of death. And all of you would have had spices in your hands approaching the tomb of Jesus, because death always wins. That's the number one rule. A couple of days ago, I learned something tragic. As some of you guys know, I love my coffee. And some of you guys know, I love my Starbucks. Yep. Last Thursday, a California judge, California let me down. A California judge ruled that coffee roasted from Starbucks causes cancer, and they now have to put a label over the cup before they sell it to you. The reason is because their roasting process, something about their roasting process, causes cancer. Of course it does. Of course death has now entered my coffee. And so now I must make a decision. What am I going to do the next time I'm handed a cup of coffee? You're going to have to rip this from my cold, dead, coffee-stained, cancer-riddled hands. Now, of course, I have to negotiate with death. I'm not that brazen. I'm not that gutsy, if you know me. But the truth is that death has come into this situation, and now I have to try to negotiate with it, and now I have to try to work around it. Now I have to make a decision. Okay, I can't drink Starbucks. I now have to go drink this. And if I can't drink that, I have to go drink this. And I will never drink Dunkin' Donuts. Sorry, guys. And I will have to go drink this and drink that. And I'm moving around, and I'm shuffling around. Why? Because death rules and reigns, and I know the rules, and I have to always negotiate with it. We are always negotiating with death. You know you are. Scarcity of resources. What is the scarcity of resources? What does that mean? That means that there are only a limited number of resources out there. And if there's only a number of limited resources out there, you have to fight to get yours. If you do not fight to get yours, someone else is going to take it. That's death. By the way, life says everything's eternal. Whatever you need, it's there. It's always there. But death says there's a scarcity of resources. Some of you guys know that. And some of you guys get, some of you guys take, some of you guys buy. Amazon.com. Some of your spouses have said to me, I'm pretty sure they want to take everything from Amazon's warehouse and put it in our house. Because we want to take and hoard and keep, because we don't think things are eternal. There is a scarcity of resources. There's a scarcity of relationships. There's a scarcity of influence. That's why some of us in our workplace, we posture and we throw our ego around, because if we posture and throw our ego around, we can get more resources. We can get more influence. We can move up the chain of command. But what if death wasn't the ultimate reality? See, the Christian imagination, for those who are not familiar or maybe have not been in church for a while, the Christian imagination says, you know what? Death is not the final reality. Life is the final reality, and you get to live in that reality if you want to. You, in the Christian reality, would never have to approach a tomb with spices in your hands because death does not win. And so we continue. They're going to the tomb. They've got the spices in their hands. And it says in verse 2, they found the stone rolled away from the tomb. But when they entered, they did not find the body of the Lord Jesus. They did not find what they expected. What did they expect? What have we said? They expected death. They did not find death, or at least the effects of death. They found for them at that moment a mystery. Some in our congregation are struggling with cancer, with Alzheimer's, with debilitating depression. Your mother or your father's unexpectedly died. And you want to say that death doesn't win. Don't you want the unexpected? Don't you want the unexpected? So they don't find what they expect, but look at verse 4. While they were wondering about this, suddenly 2 men, clothes that gleamed like lightning, stood beside them. And so what they see now is they walk in, and here are these 2 men. What they did find, what they found is what I call messengers of insurrection. And what do I mean by messengers of insurrection? The first thing I want us to recognize is that these men, if you don't know, are angels. And so anytime that you see angels, what you are seeing are 2 things. First thing you're seeing is some type of an elite military guard sent from God. The second thing you're seeing are messengers. They have something to say. So the first thing, elite military guard. If you walk into a room and you see what we're seeing here in the Bible, you are seeing that God has sent his elite military force. What does that mean? For our military-minded, that's Navy SEALs. For our geek-minded, that's Jedi Knights. For my students who are obsessed with Japanese anime, let's see, I wrote this down. It's the Hidden Leaf Shinobi from Naruto. I don't know the words that I just said. But it's these elite military force. And this elite military force would have had a message. And in fact, they were called angels or angelios, which is Greek for messenger. And the message they would have had would have been a message of insurrection. And what does that mean? You see, reality is death. That's actually who rules and reigns. That's the status quo. Reality is not life. We know that. In fact, I talk to people, and when they're talking about death, and when they're talking about being complicit or participating in what we would call death, they talk as if they're rebellious, as if they're cool, as if they're hip, because they embrace death and for what it is. And what I want to tell them is, no, you're actually company men, you're company women. That is status quo. The rebellion is life. That's the insurrection. And these angels are coming with a message. They're coming into this reality. They're saying, this is death. This is the status quo. We have now come to rule and reign over death. God has sent us as the first and advanced force to help defeat death. Jesus, the one doing the greatest work. And so they come in to rule and to reign and to overthrow death. The messengers of insurrection are the messengers who have said, life has come and has come to stay. Amen. It was the final hours. I was in my hospital room, or my mother's hospital room. I was with my family, and they had said their goodbyes. And as they had said their goodbyes and the nurse turned off the machines, One by one, they left the hospital room. My sister said, I don't want to be there when it's all over. For whatever reason, I couldn't leave. I stayed in there, and I was going to wait until the nurse said that my mother had passed. And while I was in there, in one of the rare times of my life, weeping with desperation, praying for a miracle, I realized I wanted to do something about this. I'm not a violent individual whatsoever. But this was the only time I could imagine that there was skin, and there was a voice box, and there was a throat, and then my hand was around death itself. And it was the only time that from deep inside, I wanted to crush the life out of death. Because this was not right. I wanted to hear a message of insurrection, and you guys experienced that. I know you've experienced that. You want to see death itself crushed and eternal life reign. And so the angels are there to tell a message that we all want to hear. In verse 5, it says, in their fright, the women bowed down with their faces to the ground. But the men said to them, why do you look for the living among the dead? I love this line. He is not here. He is risen. He is not here. He has risen. Remember how he told you while he was still with you in Galilee, the Son of Man must be delivered over to the hands of sinners, be crucified, and on the third day be raised again. Then they remembered his word. So essentially what's happening here is one of the things that we want to address is the first thing is they're saying you forgot the plan. You forgot. He explicitly told you what he was going to do. He was going to go, march up, go on that cross, allow the nail to go through his hands, allow the crown of thorns, allow himself to be speared, and to die because he was a lightning rod for sin and eventually all of death. You forgot that plan. That's why you're here with spices in your hands, because you still think that death has reigned. But the plan was not for death to reign, but for life to reign everlasting. That's why they asked this question, this rhetorical question. Why do you look for the living among the dead? The point is that life has left the building. It's now out there, and it's now dispensing life, and he is now raising up a new creation. Isn't that the message we all desperately want to hear? Isn't that what we need? Instead of having to make this decision and that decision to keep what's mine and get what's mine and negotiate with death. Isn't the message you want to hear is that death has no more sting? I live from a place of life. Andrew Peterson's song, His Heart Beats, says, his heart beats, his blood begins to flow, waking up what was a moment ago. And his heart beats. Now everything is changed because the blood that brought us peace with God is racing through his veins. And his heart beats. His heart beats. He breathes in, his living lungs expand. The heavy air surrounding death turns to breathe again. He breathes out his word and flesh once more. The Lamb of God slain for us is a lion ready to roar. And his heart beats. He took one breath and put death to death. Where is your sting, O grave? How grave is your defeat? I know his heart beats. The last enemy to be destroyed is death. The last enemy to be destroyed is death. He must reign until no enemy is left. The last enemy to be destroyed is death. So the women at this point do exactly what all of us would do. If we had walked into a tomb And we saw that the rules of death did not apply to Jesus. In verse 9, it says, when they came back from the tomb, they told all these things to the 11 and to all the others. It was Mary Magdalene, Joanna, Mary the mother of James, and the others with them who told this to the apostles, because they did not believe the women, because their words seemed to them like nonsense. Nonsense. The words seem like nonsense. What does that mean? What it means is people do not rise from the dead. Now, Jesus did raise Lazarus from the dead, but Jesus is dead. A dead man cannot raise himself from the dead. That is nonsense. Here's the deal. Jesus is not any man. Jesus is fully man and fully God, and the only one powerful enough to reverse the entire effects of death itself and to give us the life that we're all hungry for and that we all truly want, whether we want to admit it or not. Jesus is the only one. He's the only one. What did they find? Not what they expected, but what they secretly, and all of us secretly, long for. Something better than the death that we've been experiencing. And Jesus is the only one.